He came back the next night, and the night after that. By the fourth night, Maya had a name for the routine without having a name for him. 11:50-something, far end of the counter. Coffee, black. Pecan pie he wouldn't finish. A 20 at the end, always a 20, like he carried only 20s, or had decided that was the number, and wasn't going to revisit it. She stopped bringing a menu. He didn't seem to notice, or he noticed and decided it was fine. Either way, it was settled between them, without being said, which was how Maya preferred things to get settled. Most problems in her life had gotten worse from being talked about, and better from being quietly accepted. She had built a lot of quiet acceptance into her days. It worked. The diner stayed the same, quiet until midnight, the bar crowd, quiet again. She folded napkins and refilled salt shakers, and said a thing or two when he said a thing or two, which wasn't often. Some nights they went 40 minutes without a word. She had no problem with 40 minutes of quiet. Quiet was not emptiness. Quiet was just quiet. On the fifth night he said, "How long have you worked here?" Maya was wiping down the far end of the counter. She did not look up. "Few months," she said. "You grew up here, though?" It was not a question. She put the rag down and looked at him. "What makes you say that?" "The way you know where everything is without looking, and the way you look at the town, like you've got opinions about it." She looked at him for a moment. He was watching her without pushiness, the way a person watches something they are genuinely curious about, and not trying to own. "Born here," she said. "Left, came back." "What brought you back?" "Family." That was true. It was also the smallest version of the truth, which was the version she gave to strangers. Family was a word big enough to cover almost anything, and specific enough to close a conversation. She had used it many times. He nodded, drank his coffee. "You?" she said. She did not usually ask. The word came out before she decided to let it. "Work," he said. "What kind of work brings a person to Delia at midnight?" He looked at the pie, took his first bite, the way he always did. The first bite was never the problem. It was the second bite, and then something in him stopped, and the fork went down. She had watched this happen 4 nights in a row. The pie wasn't the problem. The pie was just where the problem parked itself. "Research," he said. "What kind?" "The kind that takes a while." She picked up the rag again. That was what men said when they didn't want to explain something. "It takes a while. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." She had heard all 3 versions from all kinds of men. She had no interest in arguing with any of them. The bar crowd arrived at 12:15. 3 men and a woman tonight, louder than usual. Somebody's birthday. Somebody doing an impression of somebody else that the table found funnier than it was. Maya filled their orders and came back to her end of the counter. She poured herself a quarter cup and stood near the coffee maker. His name. She did not know his name. 5 nights. She knew the weight of his jacket when it was wet versus dry. She knew he took 2 sugars that he never used. She knew his second cup of coffee was always drunk faster than the first, like by then he had decided to commit to being awake. She knew all of this and not his name, and for 4 nights that had been fine. Tonight, for some reason she could not explain and did not want to look at directly, it was a small stone she kept turning over in her pocket. The diner went still. She refilled his cup. "Do you know people here?" she said. "Anyone local?" "No, not yet." "You're looking to." "I need to talk to someone who knows the town well. History, old stories." Maya leaned against the back counter. "Sue Ellen Broussard," she said, "runs the library. She knows everything." "Everything?" "Everything she wants to, which is most of it." Something moved near his mouth. Not quite a smile, the almost of one, the shape before it decides to finish. She noticed it the way she had started noticing other small things about him, without deciding to, without being able to stop. She went to the other end of the counter and refilled the sugar dispensers that were already 3/4 full. Old habit. Hands needed something to do. On the 6th night it rained again, harder this time, a real rain. And he came in late, past midnight, wet through the jacket, water in his close-cut dark hair, tracking it across the floor she had just dried. She poured his coffee before he sat down. "Late," she said. "Took a wrong turn. In Delia. There are more roads than you'd think." "There are exactly the number of roads you'd think," she said, "which is not a lot." He looked at her like she'd said something that landed somewhere unexpected. Not funny, not sharp, just exact. Like she'd named something he hadn't had a word for. "You've got a specific way of talking," he said. "My mother called it directness. Most people call it something else." This time he smiled, brief and real and gone fast, like a fish coming to the surface and going straight back under. But she saw it. She cataloged it without wanting to catalog it, which was becoming a pattern with this man that she was not pleased about. She brought the pie. He ate the first 2 bites, set the fork down. The 3rd bite sat there. The diner was very quiet. Outside, the rain hit the window in long, even sheets. "What was the big thing?" he said. She looked at him. "What? The big thing here, in this town. What do people still talk about?" The sugar dispenser in her hand went still. What do people still talk about? There were many things. The flood of '09, Bobby Arcano winning state for wrestling, the mill closing and taking 60 jobs with it. These were the official things, the ones people said in regular voices. There was also Route 12, October, 2 years ago. A young man and a stretch of road, and a conclusion the sheriff's department reached in 4 days. People talked about that too. In the parking lot after Sunday Mass, in the back booth of the bar. Low voices, short sentences. The kind of talking that happens when people know more than they want to own. She set the sugar dispenser down very carefully. "What kind of research?" she said. Her voice came out even and dry. He looked at her. Something passed across his face. Not guilt, not surprise. The look of a man who had just understood that he had walked into a room that was not empty. "The honest kind," he said. "The honest kind has a name." A pause, long enough that the rain filled it up. "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Kraft." "Maya Bouchard." She said her name the way she said the hard, true things. Flat, clean, no decoration. Neither of them said, "Nice to meet you," because it was not that kind of conversation anymore. She went to the back counter and stayed there until her breathing settled, which took longer than it should have. The honest kind. She thought about that for the next 3 hours, which was the rest of the shift, which was a long time to think about 2 words. But that was the thing about 2 words that were the right ones. They had a way of taking up exactly as much space as a whole conversation. She saw him on a Tuesday afternoon when she was not supposed to be downtown. She had 3 hours before her shift, and a grocery list that should have sent her straight to the store and back to her aunt's house on Magnolia Street. But the grocery line was long, and the afternoon was the heavy, wet kind that makes everything feel like moving through water. And she had learned a long time ago not to argue with her feet when they wanted to go a different way. She took Crane Street back, past the hardware store with the A missing from its sign, HRD-ware, broken since she was 12, not once repaired, past the old courthouse, past the church with the busted gutter that had been busted since before she was born and would likely stay busted until the whole building fell in, past the library. He was coming out of it, notebook in one hand, a manila folder pressed under his arm. He looked up and saw her at the same moment she saw him. 1 second that went longer than 1 second should. "Maya Bouchard," he said. "Daniel Kraft," she said. He fell into step beside her without being invited. She let it happen because she was carrying 2 bags of groceries and did not have a free hand to redirect things with, and because, though she did not want to look at this directly, she did not actually want to redirect it. "Didn't know you worked days," he said. "I don't. I was shopping." "In this direction?" My feet had opinions. He glanced at her sideways, the almost smile. There and gone. "You talked to Sue Ellen?" she said. 2 hours. She give you what you needed? He thought about that for half a block. Longer than a simple yes or no required, which meant it was not a simple yes or no. "She gave me what she had," he said. "Whether it's what I need, I don't know yet." His legs were longer than hers, but he wasn't pushing pace, so they moved even, side by side, past the hardware store and the empty lot where the pharmacy used to be, before the chain store opened on the highway and made the little pharmacy pointless. "What exactly are you writing?" she said. "I didn't say I was writing anything." "Research is either for writing or for school," she said. "You're not in school." Another half block of quiet. "I'm a journalist," he said. "Long form, investigative. I freelance." "For who?" "Different places, wherever the piece fits. And Delia is worth investigating." She said it flat, the way her mother said things she already knew the answer to. Not to learn, but to make the other person say it out loud. Because saying a thing out loud was different from just knowing it, and sometimes it mattered which one you were doing. Daniel stopped walking. Her grocery bags hung heavy. Milk, 2 cans of red beans, a bag of rice, a bunch of bananas that were already past their best. He looked at her with that same still face he wore in the diner. No performance in it. No softening of the edges for her benefit. "There was a death here," he said, 2 years ago. "A young man. They called it an accident." The grocery bags got heavier. "They call a lot of things accidents," she said. "Yes," he said. "They do." He watched her the way you watch a door to see if it's going to open. Not pushing, just watching. She made herself look at the hardware sign across the road. The missing A had a dark rectangle around it, where the paint had faded differently. Ghost of a letter. His name was Cody Bouchard, Daniel said. There it was. She had known it was coming since the 6th night, since the question about what people still talked about. She had known it, the way you know a storm. Not from the rain, from the pressure change in the air 2 hours before. You know it. You go quiet about it. You wait. And because people here know that, and nobody has said it out loud, Maya looked at the ghost of the A on the hardware store sign. Cody had climbed up there on a dare when he was 16, made it onto the roof of the awning before their mother saw him from across the street, and screamed his name in the voice that only came out when she meant real consequences. He came down grinning. Maya shoved him in the shoulder. He laughed and said, "Lord, Maya, it was 30 seconds. And she said it only took 30 seconds to fall. And he said, I didn't fall though, did I? And she didn't have an answer for that, so she shoved him again." She hadn't had an answer for a lot of things with Cody. He moved through the world like falling wasn't real, like consequences had a sense of humor, like everything was going to be fine. She had spent years being the one who worried on his behalf. She had been worrying on his behalf when he died. "Tell me the 3 details," she said. He shifted the folder under his arm, looked at the notebook in his hand. She had the sense he was deciding something, not whether to tell her, but how much of it was his to give, and how much was hers to already own. "Not here," he said, "not like this." "When?" "When you're ready." "I told you last week," she said. "I'm never going to be ready." "I remember," he said. "I just think you're closer to ready than you believe you are." It was either a kind thing to say or a calculated thing to say. She had not yet determined which. She shifted the groceries to her other shoulder and kept walking. He did not follow this time. She made it to the end of Crane Street and turned the corner, and stood for a moment in the shadow of the old courthouse, not moving. 3 details that don't hold up. She had never said it out loud, not to her mother, not to her aunt, not to the pastor, not to the friends who had come back to Delia for the funeral and then gone back to their real lives. She had not said it because saying it was the same as walking through a door that had no handle on the other side. But she had thought it every single day. She thought about the last time she saw Cody, a week before. He'd called her in the city at 11 at night, which was unusual, and he'd sounded, not drunk, not scared, careful. He had sounded careful in a way Cody never was. He'd told her he loved her, which he said, but not like that. Not that deliberate. She'd asked him if something was wrong. He said no. He said everything was fine. He said, just wanted to hear your voice. She had let it go. She had decided he was tired or sentimental or some combination. She had told him she loved him and to get some sleep and call her at a normal hour. A week later, she was driving back to Delia for his funeral. She shifted her grocery bags and walked home and did not think about Daniel Kraft or the folder under his arm or the notebook that had 3 months of something in it. She was not good at that. She had never been good at not thinking about Cody. He came in 2 nights later. Same time, same seat, same rain, because it was Louisiana in October, and the rain had nowhere better to be. Maya poured his coffee. Neither of them said anything for 10 minutes. The diner was quiet. A Tuesday. No bar crowd. Just an old couple in the far booth, sharing a slice of sweet potato pie, and occasionally touching hands across the table in the way of people who had been doing it so long they no longer noticed they were doing it. Maya noticed. She had started noticing small things like that. Things she had trained herself not to see when she first came back, because noticing them made the absence of Cody louder. She refilled Daniel's cup. He had his notebook on the counter beside the coffee. Closed. He wasn't looking at it. He was looking at her. Tell me the 3 things, she said. She said it without preamble, without building to it. He had said, when you're ready, and she had spent 2 days deciding she was not going to manufacture readiness, because readiness was not a thing that arrived. It was just the moment when the cost of not knowing finally beat the cost of knowing. She was there now. Daniel turned the notebook over in his hands once, then set it flat. The first one is the blood alcohol, he said. The report puts him at .17. That's very drunk. 2 witnesses from the bar that night said he had 2 beers. Nursed them over 2 hours. One of the bartenders remembers because Cody tipped big, even on a small tab. She remembers thinking it was odd, a man drinking that slow and tipping like he drank a lot. Maya put both hands flat on the counter. 2 beers, she said. 2 beers. She had known this. She had known this the way you know something you have never let yourself say. Cody was not a drunk driver. He was careful on the road. He was careful about all the things that could hurt other people. Reckless only with himself, only with his own skin, and never behind the wheel of a car. She had known this, and she had swallowed it for 2 years, because she did not know what to do with it, and because the sheriff had a badge and a signed report, and she had nothing but the shape of her brother she carried around inside her chest. Second thing, she said. The road. They said he went off on the curve, past the old grain mill. That curve has a guardrail, old one. The report says he broke through it. But the guardrail repair photos, I got them through a records request. They were taken 4 days before his death. The repair crew replaced a section that was already broken. Someone drove through it prior. His car hit a fresh rail. The old couple in the far booth laughed softly at something. Maya did not move. A fresh rail, she said. A fresh rail, Daniel said. So either he broke through a brand new piece of metal, which happens, cars can do that, or someone drove that car through a different section of road, and the physics are all wrong for where they found him. The physics are wrong. The angles don't match a car going off the road at that curve at that speed. I had an engineer look at the photos. He put it in writing. Daniel paused. I know this is a lot. Tell me the third thing, she said. He was quiet for a moment. His phone, Daniel said. It was found in the car. Screen cracked, but intact. The last call he made was to you. 11:42 p.m. The crash, according to the report, happened at 11:55. The call lasted 4 minutes. He looked at her. He called you 13 minutes before he died. The third thing. The call she had gone over 100 times, not in one long sitting, but in small pieces. Waking up at 3 in the morning and hearing his voice. The careful way he had talked. The fact that she let it go, told him to sleep, said goodbye. She had punished herself with that call so many times that it had become almost abstract, like a wound she touched too often to feel anymore. She had not told anyone about it. Not the sheriff who came to her aunt's house 3 days after. Not her mother. Nobody. How did he know about the call? The phone records, she said. They pulled them. They should have, Daniel said. I don't believe they did. I got the records myself. If the sheriff's office looked at them, there's no note of it in the file. A call 13 minutes before the crash isn't in the report at all. The old couple in the far booth were putting on their coats to leave. The woman fixed the man's collar. They walked out, slow and easy. The bell above the door a small sound in the quiet diner. Maya stood at the counter. She felt something she did not expect to feel. Not grief. Grief was old news. Grief was the coat she wore every day. Not anger, though anger was close, circling in like it always did when she needed something to hold on to. This was something else. Something that had been locked up tight and airless for 2 years and had just been opened, a crack. He was not drunk. He was not careless. He was not the accident they wrote down. He called you, Daniel said, from a number that wasn't his regular cell. A prepaid phone. He bought it from the dollar store on Magnolia 3 days before he died. He set his hands flat on the counter. The crooked knuckle, the familiar wrong curve of it. Maya, what did he say to you on that call? She had not told anyone. The answer to that question was a door, and she had lived with her back against it for 2 years, holding it closed with everything she had, because she knew she had always known that the moment she opened it, the whole shape of what happened to her brother would change into something she would have to live inside of. She looked at Daniel Kraft across the counter. 3 months, 3 details, a folder full of records, and a man who looked at her like he was not going to leave Delia until he had said Cody Bouchard's name in a room where someone official had to hear it. He said he'd seen something, she said. Her voice was barely above what the room needed. He said he was going to tell someone. He didn't say who or what. He said, she stopped, started again. He said he wanted me to know he was doing the right thing. In case it mattered later. The silence after that was total. In case it mattered later. She had turned that sentence over 10,000 times and never told it to a soul. Daniel looked at her for a long moment, not with pity, not with the practiced sympathy of people who did not know what else to do with her. He looked at her like she had just handed him something he had been looking for 3 months, and he understood what it had cost her to do it. Thank you, he said. She nodded. Her jaw was tight, and her hands were still flat on the counter, and she was not going to cry in her own diner. She picked up the rag, wiped the counter. The pie sat in front of him, fork laid across it, 2 bites gone. She did not throw it, not this time. She left it there and wiped around it, and did not explain to herself why. 3 days after the conversation at the counter, Daniel told her who. He came in early, before midnight, before the bar crowd, before any of the regulars who might look up and see Maya Bouchard talking to an out-of-towner at the far end of the counter, with her hand wrapped around a coffee mug, like she needed something to hold on to. He sat down. She poured his coffee. She stood across from him and waited. Sheriff Renard's department ran a protected drug route through Delia for 9 years, Daniel said. Not Renard himself, his deputy, Carl Prudhomme, has been since before Renard took office. Renard found out 3 years ago and covered it, took a cut. He turned the notebook to face her. Names, dates, dollar amounts in the margin, written in a handwriting so small it looked like a code. Cody worked at the grain mill. The route ran through it. He walked into something he wasn't supposed to see. Maya looked at the notebook. She had spent 2 years inside the version of events where her brother drove too fast on a wet road. It was a bad version, full of waste, full of the randomness that made grief feel like something the universe did to people for no reason. But it was the version she had. She had built her whole structure of surviving around it. This was a different version. In this version, Cody had seen something wrong and decided to do the right thing about it. In this version, the last 4 minutes of his life were 4 minutes of a man who believed what he was doing was worth doing. In this version, the call he made to her was not sentiment. It was her brother saying, "I am about to do something and I need someone I love to know I am not afraid." She breathed in. She breathed out. "How much of this do you have in writing?" she said. "Enough to publish. More than enough, if you'll give me a statement." "What kind of statement?" "What he told you on the phone. Just that. Your name, his words, the date. It puts a witness on record. It changes the call from a random record in a phone log to testimony." She turned the notebook back toward him. "Who else is on record?" "The bartender from the night he died. The engineer who looked at the crash photos. A former mill worker who saw Cody talking to Prudhomme 2 weeks before the accident. Who watched Prudhomme follow him out to the parking lot." He paused. "Your statement doesn't stand alone. It stands with all of it." She looked at the counter. The bleach-pale surface she had wiped down 1,000 times. The cracks in it that ran in thin lines. She knew by location the way she knew the lines on her own hands. She had come back to Delia because there was nowhere else to come back to. Because her mother had needed someone there, and Maya was the someone. Because the city she had run to was just a place she had been, not a place she was from. And when the worst thing happened, she had needed to be somewhere she was from. She had come back and tied on an apron, and folded napkins, and been very careful and very competent, and worked very hard at not thinking, at not saying, at not opening the door. "Renard is still the sheriff," she said. "Yes." "Prudhomme still has a badge." "Yes." "And if I give you this statement, you publish, and then what? What actually happens?" Daniel did not answer fast. She had no patience for men who answered questions like that fast, because fast meant they were selling something. "It goes to a state investigator I have been in contact with for 6 weeks, he said. "He's been waiting on a witness statement that connects the timeline. He can't move without it. With it—" He stopped, started again, which he almost never did. "I won't tell you it's certain. I'll tell you it's real. It's a real path." Outside the diner, the neon sign buzzed. Pink-red light on the wet road. The bar crowd would come in 20 minutes. She would take their orders and refill their sweet tea, and smile just enough to move them along. And after that, the quiet hours until 5, when the farmers came in and the morning started. She thought about Cody at 16 on the roof of the hardware store awning, her mother screaming from the street, the grin on his face when he came down. "I didn't fall, though, did I?" She thought about the last night she talked to him, the careful voice, the deliberate "I love you," the sentence she had been carrying like a stone in her pocket for 2 years. "I wanted you to know I'm doing the right thing, in case it mattered later." She had let him go that night. She'd told him to sleep. She'd closed the call and gone back to her life, and spent 1 week not understanding that she had just heard her brother choose something. Choose it clearly, on purpose, with his whole self. He had done the right thing. It had gotten him killed. And she had stood on the other side of that, for 2 years, doing nothing, saying nothing, holding the door shut, telling herself it was grief management, telling herself it was survival. Her brother had not survived his right thing. But she had survived hers, and she was standing here now, and it was not the same as doing nothing. It had never been the same as doing nothing. It was just the waiting, the long, airless waiting, until the moment when the cost of the door being closed finally beat the cost of opening it. She put her hand flat on the counter. "I'll give you the statement," she said. The words came out clean and simple, and without decoration, which was the only way she knew how to. Say the hard ones. Daniel looked at her for a moment. He did not smile. He did not say thank you again, or tell her it was brave, or give her the look that people gave when they were about to wrap something up neat. He just nodded, once, like he understood what it had taken, and was treating it accordingly. He opened the notebook to a blank page. She straightened up, untied her apron, folded it, set it on the counter. She did not know why she did that. Some instinct about what the next few minutes deserved. She told him what Cody said. All of it, 4 minutes, word by word, the careful voice, and the I love you, and the sentence she had been carrying in her pocket since October 2 years ago. She said it out loud in the empty diner, with the neon buzzing outside and the clock above the register, and the cold coffee going colder in her hand. She did not cry. She was not crying in the controlled, held-together way she had been not crying for 2 years. She was simply dry. She had spent so much of herself on the quiet months that there was nothing left in her now for the ordinary expressions of grief. What she had instead was something that sat in the center of her chest like a coal, not burning, just hot, present, real. When she finished, Daniel closed the notebook. They sat in the quiet. She retied her apron. The bell above the door went, and the bar crowd came in loud and warm and wanting eggs. Maya went to them. She took their orders. She smiled just enough to move them along. She refilled their sweet tea. When she looked back at Daniel's end of the counter, he was gone. The 20 was on the counter. The pie was mostly there, fork across it, the same as every other night. She stood at the counter and looked at it for a moment. Then she picked up his mug and washed it clean and set it back on the shelf. Outside, the neon kept on buzzing. She had 2 more hours until 5, until the farmers and the truckers and the ordinary start of the morning. She folded napkins. She wiped the counter. She did the things her hands knew how to do. But something was different in the way the night sat around her. It was still quiet. Still the same diner, the same rag, the same bleach smell and cracked counter, and clock that ran 2 minutes slow. Nothing had changed. Nothing and everything, and she did not know yet which of those was true. She folded the napkins tight and soldier straight and lined them up in a row. She did not put anything away. Not tonight. She left the door open, and she waited for the morning to begin. Maya Bouchard learned 3 things from her mother before anything else. How to make a roux without burning it, how to smile at men who didn't deserve it, and how to show up. Show up. That was the whole lesson. Everything else was just detail. So she showed up at Della's diner at 10:45 every night, tied her apron in the back, and became the person the overnight required her to be. Competent, careful, not a lot of questions. The diner sat on the corner of Route 12 and Crane Street in Delia, Louisiana, the kind of town that appeared on maps but not in conversation. 1 stoplight, 2 churches, a hardware store, a dollar store, and a bar that had been called 3 different names in 20 years but was always the same bar inside. The population sign at the town limit read 2,400. Somebody had crossed out the 0 with red spray paint. Nobody had fixed it. Things broke and stayed broken because the town had quietly agreed that was fine. Maya had grown up here, left at 18 on a Greyhound with $60 and a plan made of nothing but want. Came back at 26 with less money and no plan at all. She did not talk about the years between. The diner belonged to Della Trosclair, though Della hadn't worked it in 4 years, not since her hip went. Her daughter Patrice ran it now. Patrice was the kind of woman who hired without asking too many questions, if you showed up on time and your hands were clean. Maya's hands were always clean. She showed up at 10:45. She got the job the same day she asked for it. Most nights were quiet until midnight, then the bar crowd, then quiet again until 5, when the farmers and the truckers started coming in wanting coffee and eggs and the morning to start without them having to ask it to. Maya liked the dead hours, between midnight and 5. Nobody needed much from her. She folded napkins, refilled salt shakers, and let the hours pass the way hours pass when you are not living them so much as moving through them, which was a different thing. She knew the difference. She had been doing it for nearly a year. The night he came in, it was raining. Not hard. The soft Louisiana kind of rain that doesn't announce itself, just arrives. Like the air got tired of holding water. The neon sign outside buzzed the way it always buzzed, steady and low and mean. And the pink-red light from it bled out on the wet sidewalk in long streaks. Maya was pouring herself a half-cup at the back counter when the bell above the door went. She looked up. He was tall, dark jacket with the collar turned up against the rain. He had water sitting on his shoulders and a face that looked like it had been doing something hard for a long time and had just now stopped. He stood in the doorway for 1 beat, not hesitating, just taking stock, and then walked to the far end of the counter and sat down. Far end, always the far end with the quiet ones. It was the seat that said, "I am here, but I am not asking for anything." Maya set her cup down and brought a menu. He didn't open it. "Coffee," she said. "Yes, please." His voice was flat and low, not Louisiana. She couldn't place it exactly. Somewhere that had real winters, she thought. Somewhere cold enough that cold was a fact and not just a rumor. She poured his coffee. He wrapped both hands around the mug, and she saw the knuckle on his right hand. Middle finger, bent the wrong way. Healed crooked, the way bones do when they don't get proper care. Old break. Long ago. She looked away. Anything else? Slice of pie. Whatever kind. Pecan or sweet potato. Pecan. She cut it, plated it, set it in front of him. He looked at it, the same way he'd looked at the diner from the doorway. Like it was something he needed, but hadn't decided to want yet. The bar crowd came in at 12:10. 4 men, loud and loose, the way men get after enough bourbon. All of them talking over each other about a game that was already finished and couldn't be argued into a different ending. Maya took their orders, eggs and toast and grits with too much butter. She brought their food, refilled their sweet tea twice, smiled at their bad jokes the way her mother had taught her. Just enough to move them along. They left at 12:50, over-tipping the way drunk men do, like their generosity only came out sideways. The diner went quiet again. Maya folded napkins, checked the coffee, wiped the counter from one end to the other. When she got to his end, the stranger was on his second cup. The pie sat in front of him with 3 bites taken out of it. The fork was laid across the plate. Not set down. Laid, like a period at the end of something. She refilled his cup without being asked. He nodded. Not thank you exactly. Something more deliberate than that. I see that you did that, and I am noting it. She went back to her end of the counter. She did not mean to look at his hands again. The crooked knuckle on the right middle finger. The curve of it. Her brother Cody had broken his right middle finger falling out of a pine tree the summer he was 11. Their mother hadn't taken him to the doctor. Pine trees didn't send hospital bills, she said, and neither would they. Cody used to crack it at the dinner table. Pop, 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 4 times in a row, until Maya screamed across the mashed potatoes for him to stop. She would give most things she owned to hear that sound right now. She was thrown back 2 years without warning, without asking for it, the way grief works when it decides it isn't done with you. And then she folded a napkin wrong, and the folding brought her back. She stood at the counter with a badly folded napkin in her hands, and her jaw tight, and her breathing even and controlled and fine. Not here, she said to herself. Almost a year of getting good at not. She unfolded the napkin, started again. At 1:14, the stranger put a 20 on the counter and stood. He pulled his collar back up. He paused at the door with one hand on the glass and didn't turn around. Good coffee, he said. He said it to the wet street beyond the door, like the compliment was meant for the night in general. The bell went. Cold air came in for a second and went with him. Maya stood at the counter and looked at the 20, the almost whole slice of pie, the empty mug. $14 over the bill. Men tipped like that for 2 reasons, guilt, or they had stopped keeping track of what things cost. She had learned to tell the difference, usually. She was not sure which one he was. She threw the pie, washed the mug, put the 20 in the register, and wrote it up clean. Everything accounted for, all the edges straight. Outside the neon buzzed, low and steady. Maya went back to the napkins, folded them all the way they were supposed to be folded, tight, soldier straight, lined up in a row. She did not think about crooked knuckles. She did not think about the sound a bone makes when it pops 4 times at the dinner table.